So everywhere we go, someone's got a story. So they're putting juice on the Mississippi River on barges.
Amateurs.
They're putting juice on in a container and taking it across the ocean and coming back. We even have here in North Carolina ghosts and playing rock and roll music in jail cells to excite the juice.
Oh. Minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You just released some information that you will have the first out of this world juice.
Yes, we are going to age at least 5 barrels in low Earth orbit for 1 year. So the barrels are going to go up on a commercial launch inside an orbiter. They will sit in an orbit above the it's a 100-minute orbit, so it's higher than the ISS. And it'll orbit for a year at least, and then that orbital will return, and when it does, the bourbon will be bottled. It's called Mystic Galactic. It's also going to be 100 proof, and it comes with a 50 mil, so you can taste it without opening the big bottle. It is very expensive. We don't know what the final release price will be, but people who buy put a deposit down now, they're going to get their bottle for $75,000. When it comes back, who knows what the price is going to be. There will be about 500 additional bottles. We're selling 1,000 at the $75,000 price. And one thing I absolutely want to make clear, as it's come up in some of the media coverage, we are not using those purchase deposits to fund the mission. That money is going into a bank account. It will not be touched. Right. The only withdrawals are for the celebrations at launch and recovery. But if we don't deliver the bottle, the money gets refunded.
Well, in full transparency, you do have a law background.
Yeah, I don't want to go to federal prison for securities law issues.
Yeah.
And we've been very careful about keeping the SEC out of this. It is a purchase deposit.
Purchase deposit.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about it is the people who purchase this are purchasing an NFT. And I know crypto's scary for a lot of people, but think about this. If I sell these bottles, right, I'm selling them online. You buy one, you happen to live in Dubai. 2 years from now, you show up in my distillery. We're going to have like an email you printed out, and I'm going to hand you a bottle of bourbon that might be worth $100,000 just based on you holding up an email. But if you have that NFT and can do a private key transaction and validate your ownership of it, there's zero risk because you're the original guy or the guy who bought it from the guy, and I don't have to track any of that. So that's why we chose to do that. A lot of people are saying it's the whole crypto thing. We backed into the NFT because we were trying to solve the problem of how do you know who you're handing that bottle to? Because it's not like if I give you one of these and it's the wrong one, you know.
Yeah.
So you touched on that. So Jonathan he is an attorney. He has a law background. So look, you don't get into this business, or for that matter, for a lot of businesses, without doing the right things, because you end up going to jail for it, right?
Right.
Well,
so anyway, they have thought this through, and from the get-go, the entire thought process has been so meticulous. You guys have touched on, I think, everything there is, except for, I don't know, to me, if that goes up in the orbiter, and the G-force is going to sling that.
So hang on. I'm the subject matter expert when it comes to this, right?
I'm going to tell you how we solved it. You tell me, you explain that.
In all transparency, many of you know that my background is NASCAR auto racing. And in the downsizing of NASCAR, it's not coincidental that Elon Musk reached out to find some of the best people in the world to do his research and development on many of the projects he does with Tesla and the other projects that he has going on. And people say, why is that? And I'm going to tell you, it's because typically it takes us 3 days to turn around before we have another race, because that transporter to and from the racetrack. So when we do research and development and we have a problem at the racetrack, we've got to immediately fix it. We can't have a meeting to have a meeting, right? So we are conditioned to solve problems. And we have partnered with NASA for numbers of years. Jay Honeycutt, myself, other crew chiefs in the industry have been to NASA. I was very honored to be in the Challenger with Todd Bodine prior to it going up. So I understand what happens when you take a rocket and you launch it off a pad. So we talk about, in Texas, the cycles of how the juice goes in and out of the barrel. We talk about maybe a ship out in the ocean, a tractor-trailer truck with Brad Paisley going up and down the road, rock and roll music agitating that juice in that barrel. I can tell you as a fact that when that juice gets launched, it's going into the wood, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, when it comes back into the atmosphere, the G-forces and the things that happen there, the juice is going to go in and out of the barrel. Now, it's a very challenging thing to say, what's it going to taste like and how
I don't
is it
think
gonna
anybody.
taste
I don't
different,
think anybody
right?
knows. Nobody knows what it's going to taste
Right.
like, and you get these. I mean, you know, the internet has experts on everything.
Yes.
You know, and they don't hesitate on Reddit to tell you exactly how it's going to taste,
Right.
or whether it will do anything or not. You know,
Right.
my favorite comment is, "It's not going to do anything." It's got to do something. It's going to do something. I don't know what it is. And the other thing that you're, you know, so one of the things you hit upon is those G-forces, especially on re-entry. You're slamming into the atmosphere, 26,000 miles an hour. Well, think about it. If you take a barrel of bourbon off the rack, roll it across the room, and you stop, it's going to continue to rock back and forth with a huge inertial moment. You have, you know, by the time you got Angel's Share, you got maybe 38 gallons that's sloshing around in there. Well, that sloshing could destabilize the orbiter. So we're actually going to take the bourbon, temporarily pull it out of the barrels, send the barrels up to West Virginia Great Barrel Cooperage. They're going to re-cooper the barrels. They're going to put titanium hoops on them because it's got to be corrosion resistant. Carbon steel will rust and cause a lot of problems inside the orbiter. Then the other thing they're going to do is they're going to put baffles inside the barrels so that it won't, as it sloshes,
Like
it's going to
a fuel
break
cell
up.
in NASCAR
Exactly,
racing.
exactly. So you can't, and my hope is that we'll be able to do a lot of this stuff, the engineering and whatnot, with some of these firms down in Charlotte, because that's, you know, for us, it's very much a North Carolina product. When the barrels come back, then we'll top them back up, and we will send them off to be put in the orbiter and then integrated into the launch.
We're at Mystic Farms having more conversation with Blitz here about the Galactic project. And, you know, we've talked a lot about the water, the mash. We've talked about grains being grown right here on the farm. Where did the idea come from to put something in space?
I think we've been working on this for basically almost the whole time we've been a company. So we went into South Carolina in 2014. We started selling our Mystic bourbon liqueur in that market. And that was our first foray outside of North Carolina. And we were a very young company. I think we were 6 months old at that point. Our first batch of Mystic bourbon liqueur came out in October 2013. And so within a few months, Mike and I were hitting the road, my business partner Michael, he and I were hitting the road, and we would drive down to the border down there in Charlotte, where all the big liquor stores are, right? And so we could do a tasting down there, and see a couple of hundred people over at Frugal McDougal.
Yep.
You know, and it was a great experience. Got us out in front of the public, taught us a lot about the business. But you know, you're driving a couple hours each way, and you run out of stuff to talk about. You know, and so you start kicking around crazy ideas. And around that time, Jefferson's Ocean had come out. And, you know, we were talking about whether it would make a difference and the historical basis for it and everything like that. And I was like, why don't we do something really extreme? Like if we could, because at that time we didn't even have a distillery. You know, we were renting production time from other people to make our bourbon.
Right.
You know, but we were really fortunate in that, you know, we get along really well. We joke about a lot of stuff. And I sort of filed it away. And then I got really serious about it during the pandemic because we had a lot of time to think about things, and the business kind of went on autopilot because all we were doing was making this one product, and everything became, you know. And so I started making calls and talking to people like Virgin Orbit. They were one of the first people we got into, you know, 10, 12 hours of conversations with. And the numbers just didn't work, you know? They didn't have the payload capacity. So a barrel of bourbon weighs, here's a piece of trivia for you, about 250 kilos. A little less than that, but you know, you're gonna have to put a shell around it, right? So 250 kilogram mass, right? And you wanna put that into an orbit that's stable enough. And so it turns out there are any number of companies that can get you up to space. You know, we live in a time where commercial space launches, you've got Rocket Lab, you've got Firefly, you've got SpaceX, of course. They're going like every couple of days. You've got United Launch Alliance. Then you've got the French with the Ariane rockets. And, you know, obviously we won't be using Russians. But the beauty part about it is you can get it up there really easily. The hard part is actually bringing it back, because 99% of what's launched in this world doesn't come back. It sits up in orbit, or it's designed for the orbit to decay, and you know, when the satellite reaches the end of its life, it deorbits and burns up in the atmosphere.
Burns out. Wow.
Right? So we need to actually stay up there for a year and come back. So that's really what's been the hard push of finding those companies, and many of them are young. You know, fortunately, there's a lot of folks that are getting into this space. But a couple that we found can really do a decent payload. So they can do 2.6 metric tons, which is basically 10 barrels. And right now we have engineers working on whether they can fit a full 10 into their orbiter. And the idea is, you know, and then it became something where we were talking about cost, you know. And initially I was like, nobody will pay more than $20,000 a bottle. I won't be able to do it for more than 20, you know. For,
Right.
And then that just doesn't work. Like, you can't get to orbit for that. You can't do it. And so eventually we landed on the price of $75,000 because we know we can do the mission for that. And it seems like a lot. I mean, it obviously is, you know, objectively, it's a lot of money. But at the same time, when you think about having something that only 1,000 people in the world are going to own, or 1,500 people in the world are going to own, and then you think about the fact that so few people in this world are ever even going to taste it. You know, it becomes an object of desire. It becomes something that is truly unique. Every drop that is in that bottle that is bourbon was in space.
In space.
Year. For a year.
Look, I thought when I visited Justin's House of Bourbon several years ago, and I actually put my eyes on the Eagle Rare, the double Eagle Rare bottle. And I looked in the case, and they wouldn't let me reach in and touch it or hold it or any of that.
That was $32,000. That
It was a
particular.
$32,000 bottle.
Yes.
That was in there. So to your point, 20, 25, 75, and that wasn't even in space.
Right.
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 That was just a really awesome bottle, an awesome presentation. But there you go. So
Yeah, and I mean, our goal really is to bring people into the experience. So they all get an app. The NFT holders get an app, and when the barrels are coming over their location, it'll alert them if they want. and they can go outside and hold it up to the sky, and it'll tell them which way to turn to see it. They'll have live video feed from inside the barrels because we're going to put. So it turns out you can buy a lot of stuff these days online, right?
Wow.
So there is a company, and this is not really an online purchase, but you can find it on the web though. There's a company that makes fiber optic inspection cameras for Air Force fuel tanks. So they're designed to be in a flammable vapor atmosphere. They're completely fiber optic. They're space grade. They're qualified to be in orbit because of all the radiation can mess up the electronics. And they're basically off the shelf. So we're going to put one of those fiber optic cameras in each barrel. We're also going to
we can
monitor
watch it.
pressure
I'm going to
and
watch
temperature.
my bourbon age.
Yeah, but think of what the char is going to be doing inside there,
Oh
and the
my God.
droplets for where the angel's share is. You're going to have droplets, dancing around. And the other thing is you're going to get more wood contact, right? And then remember that the spacecraft is spinning, right? So it's going to be pushing that bourbon just from centripetal force out, and it's going to be circulating along the inner walls of the barrel. So I think it's going to be really cool just to see what happens visually.
My head just blew up.
Yeah.
Man. So, guys, you got to come. You got to come visit this place. Come tour, meet with Blitz, meet with the staff here. This is a really exciting place, and
Thank you.
And for me, I'm a North Carolina guy. I'm born and raised here, so to have this kind of experience, this local, I kick myself for not coming sooner. But
We weren't ready yet. Now we're ready.
No,
now we're ready.
they're
we
ready,
got
folks.
we got the tour all worked out, and
Yeah.
we got it down to a science.
So come visit this place. Stay tuned and watch for the more stuff about the Galactic project as it goes forward. And Blitz, thank you for having us today.
My privilege. I really appreciate y'all coming out. Thanks
Cheers.
again.
Hey, man, cheers.